Okay, if you've ever spent time in a gym, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've seen the two camps. In one corner, you've got the lifter who's just moving weight with explosive, almost violent speed. And in the other corner, you have someone lifting with this super slow, deliberate control. And for decades, the debate has been raging. To build muscle and get strong, should you lift fast or should you lift slow? Well, let's dive into this because the science has a fascinating and maybe even an unexpected answer.
So this is it, right? This is the central question. Is there some kind of magic tempo, a secret speed that unlocks way more growth than anything else? It's a debate that's fueled by a ton of gym lore, fitness magazines, and, let's be honest, some really strong opinions on all sides. But we're going to cut through all that noise and just look at what the research actually says.
On one hand, you have the argument for lifting fast. The idea here is that it targets our powerful, fast twitch muscle fibers, the ones with the most potential for growth and strength. But on the other hand, the whole philosophy of slow, controlled lifting is about maximizing something called time under tension. The thinking goes, the longer a muscle is working, the more it's going to grow.
Let's actually dig into that second idea, because this time under tension theory is probably the most common reason you'll hear for lifting slowly. And it seems intuitive, doesn't it? I mean, more time under load should equal more results. It just makes sense.
So, what is time under tension, or TUT anyway? Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's the total amount of time your muscles are actively working against a weight during a set. The logic is simple. Stress creates adaptation in our bodies, so more time under stress should, in theory, create more adaptation. This whole idea really took off back in the 1980s with a method called super slow, and its followers claimed that the absolute best stimulus for muscle growth happened when a set lasted somewhere between 40 and 60 seconds. This led to some truly grueling workouts. And to put that into perspective for you, check this out. A single rep, one single repetition in a super slow workout could take 20 seconds. That's 10 seconds just to lift the weight and another 10 seconds to lower it. It is incredibly demanding and takes a huge amount of focus. So the theory is pretty compelling and the logic seems solid. But what actually happens when we take this idea and put it under the scientific microscope? What happens when we test it in a lab? Well, at first glance, the evidence looks really strong for the slow lifting crowd. A landmark study found that slow lifting led to greater increases in muscle protein synthesis, which is just the sciencey way of saying the muscle building process. On paper, this looks like an absolute slam dunk.
The way they designed the study was actually really clever. They had people train one of their legs with a super slow 12-second rep and their other leg with a fast 2-second rep, and they used the same light weight for both legs.
And this just perfectly shows the result. The slow tempo leg had 6 times more time under tension compared to the fast tempo leg. 6 times the tension, and it resulted in more muscle building. Case closed, right? Slow lifting is just better. Well, not quite. See, there was this tiny critical detail buried in the study's methods, a detail that changes how we look at the results completely. We have to ask the question, was TUT the real reason for the growth, or was something else going on? And here it is. The slow tempo leg was trained all the way to absolute muscular failure, that point where you just cannot physically do another rep. But the fast tempo leg, it just did the same number of reps as the slow leg and then stopped. It wasn't nearly as hard. The effort was completely different between the two legs. So that's the real driver here. The study wasn't really comparing slow reps versus fast reps. It was comparing high effort training to low effort training. And high effort won, big time. It turns out that training to, or at least very close to, muscular failure is an incredibly powerful stimulus for growth, no matter what tempo you're using. So that brings up a new question. What happens if you actually design a study where you compare apples to apples? What if you match the weight, the total amount of work done, the volume, and the overall effort between a fast group and a slow group? And that's exactly what a more recent study did. They took 2 groups, and for 8 weeks, they had them train at different speeds. But, and this is the key part, as you can see here, the total amount of work they did was statistically identical. The playing field was completely level. And here's another really important detail. Everyone, didn't matter if they were lifting heavy and slow or light and fast, got the same instruction. Lift the weight as fast as possible. This was all about their intent, the conscious effort to be explosive, not just what the clock said. So what happened? You'd probably expect the slow group to get stronger and the fast group to get faster, right?
But the results were genuinely surprising. As you can see from these charts, both groups saw big improvements in their maximum strength and their maximum movement speed. Yeah, training slow made them faster, and training fast made them stronger. And this chart does a brilliant job of showing why. This is called the load velocity curve. You can think of it like a car's performance specs. You want a car that has great acceleration off the line, that's high velocity, and a high top speed, which is like high force. This chart shows that both groups of lifters improved their entire performance profile. Their whole curve shifted up, which means they just got better at everything, producing more force with heavy weights and more speed with light weights. Okay, so let's tie all of this together. We've seen that the stopwatch can be kind of misleading. So if the actual speed of the barbell isn't the magic variable we all thought it was, then what really matters for getting stronger? Well, the science points to 3 key principles. It really boils down to these 3 keys. First is intent, that conscious decision to move a weight with as much force as you can, even if it barely moves. Second is effort, pushing your sets close to failure. And third is volume, just making sure you're doing enough total work over time to signal your body that it needs to adapt and get stronger. So here's the bottom line. When you focus on lifting with powerful intent, training with high effort, and making sure your volume is right, the whole debate over whether a rep should take 2 seconds or 10 seconds, it just becomes way less important. They're both just tools you can use. Which leaves us with one last thought. Maybe for years we've all just been asking the wrong question. Instead of obsessing over the speed on a stopwatch, maybe the question we should really be asking ourselves in the gym is simply, am I training hard enough?